Final segment here, as always, we've got Keyboard Warriors weekly hot take segment brought to you by our incredible friends at Barrel Theory Beer Company. Just 15 minutes from where we're recording here at the XL Energy Center. Everyone, there's only a couple more home games here, I believe, before the Four Nations Face-Off kicks off in February. If you get out here, whether it's for your pregame or postgame, check out the tap room. It is a very reasonable walk to the X from there. And to be honest, it's going to be a lot easier to navigate than the insanity of going into a Tom Reed's and maybe being able to stand somewhere. But also at the X, make sure you're getting the Crowler of the Day at section 105 before it sells out, which usually happens by like the middle of the first period. Or you can get Raindrops on tap all throughout the concourse, level 100, 200, and club. Joe, got a couple interesting ones here. And actually, two of them are going to be wild-based. First one we'll lead in with Minnesota Wild should expect more back-to-backs next season because Craig Leipold outed Gary Bettman's retirement plans.
There probably will be some hell to pay for that, I'm sure. Maybe jokingly, I guess. But they've had a lot of back-to-backs anyways. They've had one of the leaders in back-to-backs the last couple of seasons. How many times have you seen the Wild play Winnipeg in the second half of a back-to-back with all their players injured? So it's
always Winnipeg.
I'm sure Gary will find a way to tweak Craig on his way out at some point here, but no, I think he understood it was kind of all said, and he wasn't meaning to do that. Obviously the executive committee does a lot of things that are important to the league, and I think they're planning on his purposes. And as Gary Bettman told our Mike Russo, I'm not wired to be retired, so maybe those 2-year plan can change into a 4-year plan. Like
now, it will just because of that. Like
if I'm 72 years old and have that much money in the bank, you'd be hard pressed for me to say I'm not wired to be retired.
Gonna move to New Zealand, right? No, it's just funny. Like, is this just time served now because like of how the league screwed the Wild over with the
dead cap penalty,
suitor, like the retroactive penalty? I don't know. It's just funny that, of course, it was Craig Leipold who's the one that like everyone's like, oh, thanks, Craig, for doing this. No more media availability probably for him.
Well, it's funny too because he sat in his suite the whole game, right? Because the news came out and then he sat next. Oh, you can't sit next to Craig Leipold in the owner's suite. That's part of like the superstitions. You have to sit a couple seats away.
Yeah.
But still, him sitting there next to him, it made for obviously. Good theater there, but I don't think there's going to be that much retribution in that case.
For sure. Well, next one up, this is an interesting one. Craig Button, direct quote, "I think the talk about Auston Matthews being one of the best players in the league needs to stop. He's not as good as Draisaitl. He's not even close to Draisaitl right now."
Man. I mean, Draisaitl's in one of those kind of world by himself thing with McDavid and stuff like that. I mean, I think there's maybe some issues with Matthews being injured so much this year. You haven't seen him enough to appreciate kind of just how good this guy is. And I get Craig's point about there's a lot of really good players in this league. And like I think Kucherov is up there too. I think Kaprizov, when he's healthy, is a top 7 player in the world. But Auston Matthews, with his skill set, I still believe is one of the best players in the world. And I think if he's healthy and at the Four Nations and he has one of those kind of tournaments, then I think people will continue to remember that. I do love Craig, though. Craig shoots. He doesn't bull BS you. No. He doesn't, he doesn't, not afraid of anybody, not afraid of rankling any feathers anywhere in Toronto, Montreal, whatever. Like, I love that about Craig, and that's why I've talked to him so often, because he's just, like the truth serum for everything like that. But
for sure.
I would push back a little bit on Auston Matthews not being close. It's not taking away from Draisaitl, because Draisaitl is, I think, top 2, 3 for me. If you him and McDavid are A and B, I guess you want to call it. I don't know what you think, but that.
No, I mean it's really those two, McKinnon and Matthews, are kind of my group, and that's not to say that they're all like exactly even, but I think what gets downplayed, and first, I do think it's a little knee jerk. Like, yeah, Matthews isn't having his best year, but you look at what he's done, not only from goal scoring, which is the most important thing for any NHL team. He does it better than anyone right now. He also has such an underrated two-way game, and I don't know what the numbers say like of late, but if you erase this season from the records, like, he is a guy that should be getting Selke looks every year, but I don't think the league's ever going to be ready to put a guy who's winning the Rocket as the Selke as well.
Well, I think too what separates those guys as well. You look at McKinnon. He won a Stanley Cup, multiple playoff runs. Draisaitl is one of the best playoff performers of this generation.
It's insane.
McDavid too, and so I think, and not all Matthews' fault that he hasn't had a chance to go on a playoff run. I mean,
Sure.
that's part of it, but like a lot of things, what separates to me, and I think to Craig too, top players in the world is what can you do when it matters the most. So what can you do in the playoff? That's where, I think Kucherov, raises up the stakes there because of what he's done in the postseasons and time after time. So I think if you're going to make a little bit of a nick on a guy like Auston Matthews comparatively to a Draisaitl, a McDavid, who they haven't won a cup yet, but you can see them in the playoffs. They don't shrink away from that moment, and that's the reason that they haven't won one. So I think that would be one way to kind of clarify that there's a reason that other guys maybe elevate themselves above him in that case.
Totally. Nope, that's very fair. This one from your buddy Greg Wyshynski. And to be honest, every week that he jumps on with Jeff Merrick on Tuesdays on the sheet, we could probably pull 4 or 5 hot takes just from that episode. But we usually record right before they come out, so can't do that. But this is from last week. Wyshynski says, with all of the chatter around the McDavid suspension and how mad everybody is about it, McDavid should take a stand by sitting out of the Four Nations face-off.
Wow, well, that would be one heck of a stand to make.
Right.
And I don't know if he would necessarily do that. Like, he's not one to make waves or whether it's in the media or not, but he has the power to make a statement if he wants to. Look at Pietrangelo. He's pulled out of the Four Nations, and he played the other night, right? So, like, it'll be interesting to see. This is not the Pro Bowl type level where guys will pull out for no other reason than they don't want to go to the Pro Bowl. But I think it'll be interesting to see in the next few weeks what guys are going to be dealing with some limited or minor injuries that they might not want to play through. Or, like, if you're, let's say, the Minnesota Wild and, like, Jonas Brodin is just coming back from an injury. Like, are you worried about him going to the Four Nations? Like, if Gustafson's, like, your number one goalie and, like, he's working through some things, like, it's a very special tournament, and I get why they're promoting it so much, and I think it'll be good for the league in a certain sense. But the team's got to protect their players, right?
Yeah.
So maybe that's something where Connor McDavid somehow comes up with like a lower body injury day to day that takes a little while.
Or back to Auston Matthews, maybe Toronto being the capital of Canada. Sorry, Isha. Do they just want to be safe and not let Matthews play for Team USA? You never know. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how all of that plays out. Last one then, and this one was kind of like, this isn't reporting or guessing or anything, but Russo on his podcast, it was actually a live recording, I think, that him and LaPanta did, brought up the idea, and it sounds crazy because it's unprecedented and the league would never do anything like this, but the idea of Winnipeg relocating to Arizona. It weirdly actually makes a ton of sense after like he said it, and I sat and I'm like, oh, haha, funny. I'm like, wait, no, that totally clicks with just the trouble that they're having in their market. They can't even fill the smallest arena, which their fans are passionate. There's just not enough of them willing to pay the gate price, and it's a good team. Arizona's ripe for the picking. Like, we know Gary Bettman's getting in there the second he's allowed to. So
well, again, it's hard for a market to lose its same team twice, right?
That would suck. To the same market.
Again, and just like it would be hard to imagine Minnesota losing a franchise again. So not in the same, I guess, stratosphere in that respect. But I get how there's a lot of troubles with Winnipeg. I get that there's a business conscience with that. I've also been to Winnipeg. In those games, and the crowds are some of the loudest in the NHL, and there is that passionate fan base that follows them deeply. And so, again, this is not like a reporting or whatever like that, but I mean, if you're looking at different, I still think that the league would rather have an expansion fee versus like a relocation, stuff like that.
For sure.
They've already had kind of like the relocation thing to Utah, and like I think I'm sure the next expansion fee will be in like the 1.5 billion range or whatever that might be. So I think the league would probably rather do that than, but you never know how desperate things can get at a certain point.
It could be both if they've got another market that is just perfect for it. I know there's been a lot talked about, but no, that's fair. And I do not want that. Like, I think like you said, atmosphere in Winnipeg, incredible. They got really good fans. It's just like economically might come to pass. You never know.
Hard to see Canada losing a team as opposed to getting a new team like Quebec City or something like that, you know.
For sure. But nope, thank you again, Barrel Theory. Every week bringing you the hottest of takes.